Have you adopted a child into your family? Or do you know someone who has, or someone who would dearly like to? For some children who are suffering from abuse or neglect, removal from their biological parents is the only chance they may have at a better life. So if the courts decide that the child shouldn't return home, what happens next? Barnardos Australia has been advocating for children in this position for the last 30 years, and now, with Loughborough University, they're beginning a world-first study looking into the lives of these adults who were adopted when they were young. So we'll meet an instigator of that research in a moment, but first, joining me today in the Life Matters studio is Damian. Now, Damian spent his early life, his early childhood in foster care, until Damian was adopted at the age of 9. Damian,
yeah.
welcome to Life Matters. Thank you for coming into the studio. So, talk us through your early life, first of all, going into foster care.
Well, I was first put into the foster system by the Department of Community Services when I was about 3. I'd sort of suffered some abuse in the home and had been removed from that situation, and eventually went to court, and the court ruled that I should become a ward of the state and became a foster child. And then for about 3 years I was in the foster system with the Department of Community Services while they tried to place me, and that was never successful until Barnardos sort of took over my case, and then I was placed with my parents, who then adopted me. That was at about 6, and then around age 9 I was finally adopted.
How many foster cares roughly do you think you went through before you were adopted?
I think it's about 8. It's around that ballpark. So, and some of those were only designed as short term. They were just like, you're only going to be here until we find you a more permanent place. But others were like, oh, this is long term. The story is always like, you're never going to have to move again, and this is going to be it, and all that sort of thing, and that never pans out.
What happened to you then as a child, not having that sort of security of knowing this is it, this is where I'm going to stay? Do you remember that?
My memories of that time period are vague at best, but I know that it generates a healthy cynicism, or rather unhealthy cynicism, in a child that age, to the point where essentially adults just become people who lie to you, and anything they say to you just go, I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing.
What about when you were finally adopted? How did that come about? And when did you actually believe, yes, this is it, I'm staying here? I
think the belief really came when the ink dried on the adoption paper, to say that this is, it's now been signed by a judge and that this is it. Up until that point, right up until the paperwork is signed, the parents can always give you back. They can always go, we don't want that, that's not for us. They can essentially reject you until that point where they sign that paperwork, and then there's no turning back at that point. It's sort of a long road from there, but I don't think it really started the process of healing myself until that paperwork was signed. Yeah.
So did you feel then that now you're adopted, you're in this family forever, this is it, now I can relax? Or was it not as clear as that?
Yeah, I think that's never consciously was that I can just sort of let it go. There was never really that sense, certainly consciously, but in the back of my mind, subconscious, there was certainly a shift in the way I treated my environment, I think.
Did you stay in contact with anybody from your biological family?
The person I had the most contact with was my maternal grandmother.
Yeah.
Who, as part of the sort of arrangement with docs and having access to my biological family, one of the components of that was regular sort of outings with my grandmother, which used to happen the first Saturday of every month. They occurred. And then when I came across to Barnardos, they saw that relationship was really important and was really valuable. And as they've long held this stance that open adoption is such an important thing to pursue, they encourage that to keep happening. And my grandmother really became part of she was always a part of my family, but my adopted parents very much welcomed her into the fold, and there was never a sort of a sense of separation between this is your biological family and this is your quote-unquote real family. It was always, this is just your family. My family's maybe a little bit less traditional than some people's, but it's certainly still a family.
Yeah, a wonderful point. Damian, what about other people around you? What about friends at school? Like, when you would, moved from foster care to foster care, does that mean that you also had to move schools?
Pretty much always.
Yeah.
It was always a case of going to a totally new place and meeting totally new people, and it does a couple of things for you, some of which are good and some of which are bad. The good part is that I'm really good at meeting new people. I can attest to that. The other bad part is that sort of took a long time to let go of, was that you always kept a part of yourself back from people, because if you were never going to be there for a long period of time, there was no need to be real with people and be totally open and honest with people, because it was never going to be permanent. Until that permanency really sort of set in, that was always a factor.
Yeah. Now, I realise that this is almost a ridiculously impossible question to ask, but how do you feel being adopted has changed the direction of your life? And I do realise that that's a tricky question.
I think it's a question most people play with themselves at some point, when they go sort of, what if this choice was different, or what if I did this different thing, or what if I stayed there, or whatever. I've certainly played that a lot over the years, and I think that were I not in the situation where I am now, there are, just if you look at the statistics, I would be either in prison or in a coffin or on the street. They're pretty much the only three choices really that happen, both when you consider age and situation and that sort of thing. So having that opportunity to come into a home and have that be permanent, and have parents that were so committed and so unrelenting in their desire to help me and their desire to give me a safe place to call home. I mean, I don't live with my parents anymore. I live with my partner, but I always know that if I could call my mum in 5 minutes and just go, "Mum, I need to come home, I need to see you," she would be, "I'll be there." I know that if I needed them, my parents would virtually drop everything and come running if I needed them to.